All right, Christian, Martin, and Natalie. Hope you're all doing well. Some points to make. The list that I've suggested to you, the three, four, or five lists that I've suggested to you to incorporate in your self study. Very important that you keep studying those lists regularly. Regularly. If I were you, second conditional, hypothetical mood. If I were you, I would be studying those. Oh, if I were you and I had the same language objectives and goals that you had, I would be studying those lists every day. Not for 4 or 5 hours, but I would be studying them for every day, probably at least 30 minutes. Um, Remember when let's say you type in one of the lists that I suggested into Google, and you said verbs that are followed by either an infinitive or by a gerund or both. Remember, some verbs can be followed by both. Welcome to crazy English. Um, Google will give you whatever you ask for very specifically, but in your search, it will also give you related websites related to the search that you originally requested. So you'll encounter lists I have not even suggested, and maybe I'm not even really currently aware of. That's okay. My suggestion to you is study those lists. Even the lists I didn't suggest. There could be at least 5 to 10 really critically important, useful, practically useful lists that you could study to further your English language abilities. Please do it regularly. One of my students showed me a chart that he made, and a very impressive chart, color coded, adjectives followed by certain prepositions, and oh, it's just amazing. Verbs followed by either a gerund or an infinitive or both. It was, just a really good indication, a strong indication of his commitment to enhancing his language abilities. You're all putting in the effort, believe me. Sometimes I keep coming down on you hard and I don't let you away with much, believe me, I know that. But you all have a very strong commitment to enhancing your overall language abilities. It's very impressive and it will benefit you. It will benefit you ultimately. It will ultimately benefit you. It will ultimately benefit you. Um, Anything else? Really, with the three of you, it's very interesting, and it's very similar for advanced English language speakers from Quebec, the government workers I've worked for several months now, and even actually in previous years. That's a different conversation. Portage buildings, I remember Portage 1, Portage 2. Yeah, I think they were in Roman numerals back in the day when I used to cross the bridge and go into Hull. I'm not sure. I think it's in Hull. Yeah, the Portage buildings. Anyway, um, it's interesting with all of you. Your grammar's strong. Generally speaking, I'd grade it differently for each one of you of the three. But generally speaking, your grammar is very strong. I'd rate it at about an 80%. 100% would be the way I use the English language and English grammar in a formal standard context. 100%. 99, whatever. But I would rate you guys at about 80%. Some a little bit higher, some a little bit higher. But you all face the same challenges, and they're very minor. They're very minor. You've got to be aware of plurals. Plurals. Language transfer from French to English and trying to manage the plurals, it's a nightmare. That's one thing that needs to be on your radar. I would argue, especially with your responses with TOP questions and situations and contexts in the TOP, most of the time your nouns are going to be in plural. So if you're not sure, I would argue default to the plural, and you're probably going to be correct. Could you be incorrect? Yes, you could. It depends on the context in the sentence. Yeah. Plurals. Be aware of them. Do as much self-study as you can, as much language monitoring that as you can, to be aware of the way in which you manage plurals, the way you analyze them, and then the way you produce them in a spoken capacity. Plurals. Conditionals. Yeah, each one of you. Each one of you. Every once in a while, I will just engage with, excuse me, I will engage in just natural conversation and throw some random conditionals at you. Usually you manage them well, but sometimes you'll surprise me and I'll hear some strange responses and I'll just cut to the chase. Incorrect responses. All right, we don't need to get into it. Here's another thing that you absolutely must master, especially for TOP purposes, especially once the TOP goes back to its original format. You absolutely have to manage them correctly and produce the spoken responses accurately and correctly. And it's not rocket science. You can do it. If I were the manager, I would give the employees a raise. If I had been the manager, I would have given the employees a raise. If I'm the manager, I will give the employees a raise. Okay, we've been over it. I'm not going to go over it anymore. But you're still inconsistent. There are 4 basic conditionals, the zero factual conditional. If I get off work early on Fridays, I always go with Michael to the pub. First conditional. If we end class early, I will go with Michael to the pub. Second conditional, hypothetical mood. Very important for the TOP as well as the third conditional. If I got off early, I would go to the pub with Michael. Third conditional, untrue in the past. If I had gotten off work early, I would have gone with Michael to the pub. Now, yes, conditionals can be mixed once you get to very high levels of mastering standard English and standard grammar. Yeah, they can be mixed. We've talked about it. I've talked about it with all 3 of you. You don't have to worry about that for the TOP. You're not going to be tested on how well you can mix the 4 conditionals. One example of mixing a conditional would be, if I had not gotten divorced 10 years ago, I would be a happy man today. That's an if clause, third conditional, untrue in the past, mixed with a second conditional, untrue in the present. Because I didn't get divorced in the past, and I'm not happy today. Okay, don't take this literally. But that's really what the implication is. And again, that's the third conditional. That's a third conditional if clause mixed with a second conditional result clause. Once again, if I had not gotten divorced 10 years ago, I would be a happy man today. That's how you mix conditionals once you have absolutely mastered the basic structure of the 4 conditionals. Zero or factual conditional. First conditional, true in the present. Second conditional, untrue in the present. Third conditional, untrue in the past. You absolutely have to master them. And yes, once in a while you can slip up with me when we're working together, informal conversation or formal conversation. Okay, and I notice you make more mistakes, generally speaking, with English grammar when all 3 of you are engaged in very personal, informal conversation, talking about family, talking about maybe some personal matters. And when someone's talking to me about something very personal, I'm not going to, even though I'm fanatically obsessed with improving your grammatical accuracy. If someone's telling me something very personal, and especially something very emotional, there's no way I'm interjecting and saying, "Oh, you didn't follow your verb to be with the subject pronoun." I'm not doing that. But any other context, and I will. So you absolutely have to master the conditionals. You have to. If you have a bad day with me, once in a while, you're going to have a bad day with me. But we need to see steady improvement, steady progress, especially in relation to the conditionals. We'd like to see that also with the plurals. The lists, okay? Adjectives that are followed by specific prepositions. Verbs that are followed by either gerunds or infinitives or both. There are other lists as well. I've given them to you. I can't recall them at the moment. But it's your responsibility as a language learner to be studying those lists regularly, absolutely regularly. and you will enhance the grammatical accuracy with which you use the language. Yeah. Um, I think that's basically it. But I guess my last point was, generally speaking, that it's just like these three or four, possibly five areas that I noticed with all three of you in which problems still persist. It's not major. I still think you get even all three of you right now. If we gave you the TOP, the original format, I think all three of you would pass and get your C. I think one or two might have better chances at getting the C, but I still feel confident that all three of you could get your C. But it's these three or four or five areas: plurals, mastering the conditionals, especially in a spoken response, the lists, the three, four, five, six lists that I've suggested that you need to absolutely understand and use correctly, use accurately. Okay, the verbs followed by specific prepositions, adjectives followed by specific prepositions, verbs followed by either gerunds or infinitives or both. There are about three, four, or five. There are probably four or five lists that I recommended. There are more, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. I would argue that you need to know very well to enhance your language abilities. But really, yeah, so like that's good news. Three or four minor areas in which you need to continue to monitor to increase your awareness of and to analyze, process, and produce more accurately. Three or four minor areas. That's not bad. Okay? Comes down to your commitment to doing the self study, the commitment to the teaching, the learning in all respects, and you'll get there. We will improve on in these three, four, five minor areas of grammar, and that's really it. There are no other major criticisms, and that I don't. That's not even a major criticism; it's a minor criticism. So that's good news. It's just three or four. That's what it comes down to, from what I know of all three of you. It's three or four areas of grammar in which you need to continually demonstrate progress and language improvement. So that's not bad news. You can do it. Just keep doing what you need to do to enhance your language abilities. Thank you.